Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here at Web Summit. My name is Jason Bloomberg. I am an industry analyst with Intellix, and I also contributor to Forbes. And we should dive right into it. I'm going to let each of our panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll get into questions. So why don't we start here and work our way down?
Sounds good. My name is Jager McConnell, CEO of Crunchbase. I've been a CEO for about 3 years now. I was part of the spin-out. And then prior to that, I was at Salesforce for a very long time running product.
Hi, I'm Zander Lurie, CEO of SurveyMonkey. Been with the company almost 3 years. SurveyMonkey is a 19-year-old business. We created the category for survey software. Our mission is to power the curious. We help people measure, benchmark, and act on the opinions that drive success.
I'm Gaurav, Dhillon, founder and CEO of SnapLogic. I've been in the data business for 2 decades. Prior to this, I founded Informatica, built that into a public company. It's what we do.
Very good. So we have some 3 high-powered CEOs with us today. So let's see if I can give them a hard time. But I'll start off with an easy question. So given the vast quantity of data in organizations today, where data really are the lifeblood of the modern digital organization, what are some important pointers for extracting insights? Right, it's one thing to have quantity, it's another thing to have useful data that you can actually take action on. So what would be your key pointers for pulling out those important insights? And anybody can start.
Gentlemen?
I'll kick it off. We have almost 3 million people a day coming to SurveyMonkey to launch surveys. They collect over 20 million responses a day. Really trying to glean insights about how to better serve my customers, what my employees need around employee engagement or benefits, market research, what products to launch, what campaigns to launch. That data, that insights, when you really care about people's opinions around you, the people who drive success in your business, you ask them questions, you listen. It doesn't mean you always meet their demands, but at least you're able to integrate that data. If you're trying to understand what female millennials want, that's very different than maybe your older males when you're launching a new product or launching a new campaign. You know, we recently launched a survey for Web Summit. We collected over 3,000 responses, and women, younger women specifically, told us that diversity and inclusion matters in ad campaigns. It matters significantly to 21% of them. That's a very different statistic than if you're advertising to a different demographic. So our advice, and it resonates for SurveyMonkey, of course, is ask questions of people you care about, if it's your students, your patients, your shareholders, and then listen to that data. It's very different data than you're collecting through operational enterprise metrics. So we always advise folks to marry that survey data to operational data, the metrics, and we always cite Jeff Bezos as the one who's the very best. He collects more data than anybody, but he often forwards emails to folks internally with one question mark. And that could mean I'm curious about this or WTF. But if he's reading anecdotes from customers about products or customer success, he wants to follow up on it. Those anecdotes are rich, rich signals for you to be better in your job.
I can chime in. So our experience is more in the enterprise, companies like Schneider Electric, Emirates Airlines, and others. And I've been doing this for long enough to say this. In business, we found those projects succeed whether it's data science and AI now or data warehousing in the last century. If you work backwards, it seems so simple, you know? Like, what do you mean by that? Talk to the people who are struggling with the data. Talk to the person who's trying to do pricing. Talk to the person who's trying to do compensation. Talk to the person who's trying to figure out customer retention. What are the challenges they face, and then build your data strategy backwards. Because all too often, people build data strategies top-down. And I found those mostly fail. It's like a technology searching for value in the enterprise, and those have been, to our mind, poor projects. But the excellent projects have been working backwards.
In our case, you know, we have 45 million people coming to Crunchbase to find company information. There's a lot of noise in all that data. And what we've learned is we actually have to know what the questions are before we go and look at the data. What are the things that we want to go and solve for? For instance, like maybe you want to go and optimize your funnel. Like we sell something at the end of that funnel. So how do you go and optimize all the way down? Let's start at the very end, the closest thing to the problem, and then work our way up. But we sort of say, well, why do people leave Crunchbase? Like, there's a million answers to that question. So you need to kind of get down to the nitty-gritty of the thing you're trying to solve, and then look for the questions that can get you closest to the answer down there. And then you can start using data to inform those questions with answers. A lot of people just get sort of overwhelmed by how much data there is, and you have to stay focused on what's important to your business.
Very good. So just a note, we'll be able to take questions at the end if we have time, so you can join via the app, or at slido.com, #WebSummit. I see there's already some questions queued up, so thank you for that. But let's go into another question, this time about artificial intelligence, which is obviously closely related to data, right? You need data to feed your artificial intelligence. So I'm going to ask the panel what they think about AI, not in the future, right? Everybody talks about the wonderful or dystopian future of AI, take your pick. But really in terms of the present, what are the solutions available today in terms of commercial successes, or are vendors, AI washing, that is pretending that they have AI but really just paying lip service to AI? So what do you folks think? Gaurav?
This is the enterprise software business. There's a lot of washing. Fill in your favorite, cloud washing, AI washing, whatever. But look, I've come to believe that we should continue to have a vision for broad AI. I'm not talking flying cars, but I'm talking like, I hope someone does my taxes, like an AI does my taxes. Dealing with government, I'm seeing some of these questions. Getting a driver's license, getting your passport, security checks. Those things should become AI. Clerical stuff should become AI. There's a broad AI. But narrow AI is being very successful in business. We're finding that people can do just an amazing job of improving technology, do an amazing job of getting beyond business intelligence, and we may not even fully understand how it works, like facial recognition on your phone, but it works. So why can't we have those sort of things in business projects? So we think having a vision for broad AI and crisply focusing on daisy chain projects that provide narrow AI is the best method to go. And we've seen countless successful examples done that way.
Yeah, I would piggyback on what Gaurav said. I think if you look at how competitive the environment is today, you've got to be excellent at whatever you're providing to differentiate and to truly offer, a superior customer experience. We recognize that we've collected over 47 billion answers in the history of SurveyMonkey, and so what we're trying to do is help people ask great questions and glean the insights. So we launched a product last year called SurveyMonkey Genius, which is really just a set of algorithms that intuitively predict what you need to ask. And so if you're coming to SurveyMonkey to launch a new company and you're trying to understand what benefits your employees might want, you don't want to start that survey from scratch. We can help you construct a better survey, maximize the response rate, and really lead you to the insight so you can make the right call, make the right decision. And I think AI done well, whether it's in music or in how Gmail is helping predict what answers you might want to provide, AI done well is super helpful. AI done poorly is really creepy and sucks.
And I'll give kind of a data answer. So Crunchbase, again, tracks funding. So in the last year, about 3,000 companies have been funded in the AI space and over $80 billion.
80?
Yeah, so there's a lot of dollars going in this, which means for a consumer of that AI stuff, it's a lot of fluff. There's a lot of stuff that just isn't baked yet, with a lot of promises of what it can do and not really reality yet. So I'm kind of way on the skeptical side. I don't even call it AI. It's machine learning. We're doing what people used to do with slide rules, just at scale. And the reality is like, as we get further down the path of being able to dump data in and get answers out, we'll have advancements that are exciting. But I haven't personally seen it yet. A lot of tools that say they give me AI is actually just giving me cool charts and graphs with a line on it. So we're so far away. So I'm going to go in the fluff.
Skeptical.
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical. For the time being, I think that's where we're going to go. There's enough money going into it, it's going to make sense. But right now, we're still in the very, very, very early stages.
So when we talk about data, there are many different kinds of data and a lot of different distinctions between categories of data. And the one I'd like to ask about first is the distinction between machine-generated data, say log files from your systems, so operational data in your IT organization, and there's quite a bit of activity there dealing with that kind of information. And then there's human-generated data, and I know the SurveyMonkey and Crunchbase deal primarily with human-generated data, where SnapLogic can deal with you name it, any kind of data. But with human-generated data, there's particular challenges, say, bias in the data. So I'm curious what the panelists think about how you deal with the distinction between machine and human-generated data, the differences, and then how do you deal with some of the problems, like bias in particular? So, anybody want to dive in on that one?
Sure. Look, at the scale at which they're operating, you could say machine. 40 million or however many. The thing we find is if you're running a business that is coping with data at scale, it doesn't matter what the source is. Something that is powered by the web at a web scale is not that different from the data coming out of a firewall that is telling you something sneaky might be going on and so on and so forth. And I think at-scale data requires a certain kind of hydraulics to manage and to do it right, and you need the right kind of technology, technologists, and tooling to make it happen. But beyond that is pattern recognition, it's looking for the good things, it's looking for bad actors. Fundamentally you start to apply the same kind of lenses, optician sort of tools on it.
Yeah, if you want to scale your business, and I don't think every business needs to be built to scale, but if you want scale, you need the machinery, you need the people, you need the systems. That's not a gut decision. You need to build to scale. But if you really want to excel, you have to layer on the right emotional intelligence and human interaction, because customers are humans, they want to be treated like humans, and thankfully, machines and robots can't treat us like humans the way that a really caring, empathetic person who understands you. And so I think artificial intelligence, scale, it leads you to a certain place, and then you need to trust human beings to kind of finish the job and truly differentiate your business.
I totally agree with that. In our case, we have a lot of user-generated data that then is publicly visible to the rest of the internet. So we have human error at the beginning, and then we've got a lot of AI, machine learning stuff going and identifying this stuff looks suspicious, but it's not confident enough to actually decide and change the data, and that's where we have another layer of humans involved, HI, I guess, to go and clean that data and make it better. That has to be a harmony. Like, that's a concert together. And anyone who tries to separate it, either way, it's only be human or only being computers, you're going to have a bad time. You have to have them working together in harmony.
And part of the beauty of the web is that you can't always be on. You can't facilitate those interactions. But customers, when they're upset, they want a human being. And if you don't provide it, it really just says, I'm not committed enough to this relationship. I'm not willing to spend enough to be available. Thank you for buying our product instantaneously, but your response will be 3 or 5 days away.
Totally agree.
That doesn't cut it. So it's a trust issue. And if you need to put more people against it to police the platform, to keep crap off your platform, or to be there to answer questions, or to provide a refund when necessary, that's usually a cost issue. And if you want to build a business model to scale, you can't build it just for success. You need to be there when the customer, when she's got questions, you've got to put a human being on the other end to answer it.
Can't be a bot.
It can't be a bot.
So another distinction across different types of data is the question of levels of structure. So structured data you might have in a database, semi-structured might be an XML or JSON file, unstructured is generally text-based data like emails or just documents, but there's also video, audio, and other kinds of data. So what is some of your advice for how you deal with these distinctions, in particular the more difficult types of data to deal with? I mean, structured data is sort of where every data company starts, but dealing with audio, visual, or say IoT, telemetry, and other kinds of data can be much more of a challenge. So, what is some of your insights into how to deal with these different kinds of structures of data?
Take it.
Well, if you can afford to store it, store it. And the cost of storage is plummeting all the time. Right? Because we may not have the algorithms or the AI worked out yet to create signal from that noise. But if you can afford to store it, and you can more than you believe using modern cloud technologies, our advice to our clients is deduplicate it. You don't need duplication. But absent duplication, store all you can, because the software will catch up. The artificial intelligence will catch up. Some of that $80 billion in funding is going to find the Larry and Sergey of the next generation. It's going to be there.
That's true. In our case, we're very structured. However, there's a lot of data that we couldn't possibly store for the same reason. So we use vendors like Heap or Pendo, where they're just going and sort of capturing all this data, so we can retroactively go and ask questions of our data. So we can go and say, what if, how many people use this button to go and do this thing? We didn't know that button was important before, that graphic or that color, whatever it was. Those tools let you retroactively go and do insights. I think that's really, really interesting. And again, it's a function of that's their core competency, and storage levels going to the point where they can store just insane amounts of data, which is awesome.
So I'm going to take a question off from the audience here. There are a few questions about AI, so let's return to that topic. So here's an interesting question, right? Big old companies lack creativity and expertise around AI. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's, I guess, a premise. Where startups have these things, creativity and expertise. So how do you connect the two? Or for this audience of entrepreneurs, what is some advice to for an entrepreneur to leverage AI in the context of their the project, their business they're trying to start? So
yeah, I mean, I'll start. Part of how we've architected to be an open, configurable platform is that our SurveyMonkey data can flow seamlessly into your other systems of record. We hold a premise that most of the companies here, you're not all looking for another system of record. Salesforce and Workday and Marketo, Google, Microsoft, they're expensive, they're important, big enterprise applications. For every one of those operational applications, you can supplement that with how are my employees feeling? What do my customers want? What should I do about X? Those can trigger surveys using AI. If a Salesforce customer is up and going, that triggers a survey. If somebody gives you an NPS score, of 3 or below, that can trigger a survey. And being able to kind of feel those signals in the enterprise system you're working with is really an AI application that enables our SurveyMonkey data to flow seamlessly in and out of the different enterprise applications.
I think that's a great example. But I think maybe not from SaaS, but one of the examples that I'm very excited about is radiology. The field of radiology, I think using AI to detect things early is a killer app. If I was out there thinking about, to me, it helps humanity. And it's not that the radiology scan will tell you, well, you have something. You will require human intervention if radiology catches something. But right now, MRIs, X-rays, mammograms, they're so inefficient. They're so prone to error that I think things like that, where we can apply AI into a repetitive problem that involves dense processing, could be excellent uses of AI, would be fantastic places to go, in my opinion.
I would only add that, there are a lot of hot startups, as we just talked about, doing AI stuff, and there's a lot of, every one of those big SaaS providers claims to have a sort of fluffy-ish machine learning tool. I'm not naming any names. But what you're going to do is you're going to see those two things merge. So those companies are also buying those little hot startups like crazy. If you have traction, there are a number of big enterprise SaaS companies that would like to buy you. So you're going to see that merge over time. And in this intermediate time, to sort of try to answer the question directly, if you are deciding to buy a big enterprise SaaS thing, you should be looking at the ones that have the powerful APIs that allow you to go and integrate the two. You may have to do it manually. You may have to convince that small startup to do the integration for you. But those two things have to come together, and only APIs on the enterprise SaaS side will allow you to do that ultimately.
Yeah.
So in keeping with the informal policy that every panel has to mention GDPR at least once, let's ask the GDPR question. So in terms of big data, how can big data and big data insights support GDPR compliance? But the other side of the question is, how does the GDPR requirements impact an organization's ability to leverage big data, right? Obviously, there's certain things now we're not able to do. So sort of what are the two sides of the story? And see what the panel thinks.
Yeah, we were GDPR compliant in May. We think, frankly, it's a differentiator for companies that are super focused on consumer privacy and security. We don't face some of the scrutiny that ad-based business models do because of the subscription nature of our business. But I think GDPR, credit to Europe for being at the forefront here. It's going to transcend the world in terms of those requirements. And frankly, it pushes companies like ours and others to be more focused on delivering value and adhering to consumer privacy, consumer security, data sovereignty. So I do think it focuses entrepreneurs on not just how do I scale and leverage my business for my own, P&L, but it's more about how do I provide consumers better services and do that in adherence with the laws and where the regulators are going. So I think we're looking forward to seeing what companies come out with that is both valuable to the end user, but also GDPR compliant.
Yeah, I'd add to that. There was a lot of whining that it can't be done. It's too hard. All that stuff. It can be done. And Europe has shown the way. I would say, again, hats off to the European regulator for doing regulation right. It is so easy to, as Mark Twain said, legislate in haste and repent at leisure. So they did it right. They put it together right. But what we found for our enterprise customers is that some of the things we had built to deal with data gravity, some of them maybe consumer businesses have a lot of stuff on the web. Some of them are manufacturing, have a lot of factory machines that have data. We built a way to do data gravity, to put data where it should be, because it's easier to ship. It's still hard to ship sometimes. But we found that using that same technology to comply with GDPR was a fantastic thing. So our customers can use our products to say, how do we geofence this data? So data about drug trials in EU stays in EU, data about a drug trial in the US stays in the US, and FDA and so on. So we're finding that actually we're able to help our customers comply in a very good way.
And all I would add is GDPR is a way that we should be building products already. So it's great that you're getting compliant, or if you think it's too hard, you need to do it. Yeah. But the reality is it's going to spread all over the world anyway. I know in California there's already regulation being introduced. That's very GDPR-esque. So you should be building your products that way already, and figuring out how to go and do the analytics, use the data in a more anonymous way, right? And learn your insights so you don't have to violate people's privacy. It's a good thing to do anyway.
So we have time for one more question with quick responses. So there's sort of a hierarchy of value. There's data that leads to knowledge, that leads to understanding, that leads to wisdom. So I'd like to ask the panel, what do they think of that? Is it make sense, or is it a bit overly simplistic? And what really is the priority here, right? We're talking about data this morning, but are we really trying to achieve wisdom in our organizations, or is that sort of a bit off topic? So very quickly.
So you used an example of Jeff Bezos. I like what Reed Hastings does with data. To my mind, having wisdom is an act of will. It takes management willpower to get wisdom about something. Everybody has the same technologies. Some have the will to use it, some don't. Reed and his CFO, Dave Barry, were using Teradata in 1998. They were spending ginormous F&A dollars at the IPO on using data to figure out what are the hits, what's the long tail, how to buy content, and now how to make content. Yeah. So I think it's data and then knowledge, but wisdom is still a human condition. It takes management insight, management will to make it happen.
Yeah,
15 seconds.
Management's not complex, it's just hard. You're launching businesses today. My advice is use data to better serve the people that you are duty-bound to serve, your employees, your customers. Help get that data so you can gather the insights you need to be a better person in business. Patents and exclusive contracts will not be moats around your business in the 21st century. It's going to be your ability to deliver products with better services.
And Jager, final words.
Final words are just, don't let data wag the dog here. Use your common sense and go out there and find the insights that you need to make your business successful. Only supplement with data when you need to.
And that's it. We're out of time. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. And enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Good work.